And we'll record. Hey, okay, so we're now being recorded, and probably it's going to be hard to hear because of that heater, but once the temperature gets above freezing, then we'll go ahead and we'll start. So the text for this class is 30 Steps to Heaven, and I believe most people who asked for one, thank you, got one. I put it in an order, and I know as the order was going through, more people said, oh, I want one. And so finally we had to cut it off and just say that's enough. So I ordered 10 copies. I believe I got them out to everybody who ordered them before. If you need a copy, you can either go online. Amazon has them, and they're about the same price. We're charging $14.50, so say around $15. If there's people who want to, I guess someone has offered to use Amazon Prime, they have that available. Or if you want to kind of consolidate and get some, that's fine. I got mine on the Kindle, so I'm going to see how that works out. But it's also available on Kindle as well. So there's different medias if you want to go ahead and get the text. So the pre-read was the first 3 chapters. And I know some people heard it and some people didn't. I know some people didn't get the book. So what we'll do is we'll go over those anyways. But just for future reference, what I hope to do is to try to cover 2 to 3 chapters a meeting, okay? The objective being to get through all 30 steps, hopefully, by the end of Great Lent, or shortly thereafter. I know in the past studies that I've been leading or involved in, it seems like we start them and we either don't finish them, or we take several years to get them done. I don't want to do that. This is some good stuff. Hey, got Brian. We're recording. I just want to let you guys know. So.
You were supposed to say that.
Yeah, you were supposed to say that. Okay, I can edit that out. So the objective is to go ahead and try to get this covered within the time frame that we have, which means that we're going to be trying to hit it quickly, and I don't want to exclude any opportunities for discussion or anything like that. I mean, that's really what this is about. But also respecting the time frame, because everybody has works, they want to get home. Things like that. So I don't want to let it go for 2 hours. I'm hoping that we can try to keep it within an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and then everyone go, all right? If we want to continue discussion, that's fine, but let's not do it here. All right? And also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send around a piece of paper, and if you could please, go ahead and write your name. I want to make sure I have everybody on this list, because, just set it right here, just go ahead and make sure you put your name and your email on it, just make sure I have a current one. And what I'll do is I've already started a distribution list, and so we can go ahead and do that. If we have questions that we want to do, through the group, we can go ahead and just do a copy all, send to all, and kind of circulate those questions if we want to do that. If we really want to get fancy, we can try to set up a chat group in Google or somewhere. I can look into that if we want to try that as well. I don't know. We'll have to see how this works out. So I'm sending around both sides this little worksheet here we'll start out with, and I'll explain what we're going to do here in a second. So just go ahead and take one down and pass it around. For you, Brian.
I love it.
Yeah. So, letter of divine ascent. We'll go through this and talk about that in short order. So, the text, of course, we're going to use is the 30 steps. Also, and I kind of like this. This is in the classics of Western spirituality, but it's John Climacus, the letter of divine ascent. There is also, you can pick this up online for free. So you can go out, to the website. Just go ahead and put in John Climacus or Letter of Divine Ascent online, and you can go ahead and read it online. The only reason I'm saying that is you don't have to pay whatever this is, the $30-some to buy the text, or like me, get it for free from somebody if you don't want to. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that the Letter of Divine Ascent is referenced in the book, but is referenced in the book, but if you want to go to I'll call this the first source, not the original source, but the first source, then you can go here. Online, some of the translations kind of come off as not reading too well. They're kind of stilted. I don't know if they took the original or took a Greek version and threw it into a Google translator, and that's what you get. So read it. If it doesn't read well, then ignore it. But if you want to go ahead and just go to a more first source, this would be available online. Also, a book that I've read before that I really like is this one here, Ascending the Heights, A Layman's Guide to the Ladder of Divine Ascent. And this is by Father John Mack. Now, you can see it's a lot thinner, so it's a great book. But also what he does is he kind of boils it down very, very quick, and the chapters are short. I think this one that we have here, the Papa Vasilou text is very good as far as those go. I was talking to my wife Susan about that. When I found out that Father wanted to do that, we had read some texts before from the same author. And they came out a little hard to read, and again, I don't know if it was the translation or the topic, but some of it seemed to be a little tough, a little stilted the way it was written. But this is written very well, so I think you're going to like this.
Is that
Yeah.
with a K or a C?
CK. So and again, this is just another text that I'm going to be referencing back to, mainly because I'm familiar with it, and it's an easy read. So, onward and upward. So for the reading tonight, what we wanted to cover was the introduction and the first two chapters, right? The first two rungs. Now, what are the first two rungs about? Gotta get. Yeah. Well, let's open our books. Yeah. All of us who read, yeah. What's that? Okay, renunciation and?
Detachment.
I'm sorry,
Detachment.
and detachment. So renunciation and detachment. Very good.
And exile.
I'm sorry?
Exile?
Exile?
Well, that was the third one.
That's the third one.
Sorry.
So we're talking about the first one. So we're gonna talk about the introduction and renunciation and detachment here. So if you take a look, the way it's broken down is he's talking about breaking from the world. So one nice thing about the Papa Vasilou text is that he's kind of broken it down into topics. So as we look at this, we can kind of follow along that way. Also, on the handout that I gave you, I used the outline here that's in the Mac text, which is kind of sort of the same, maybe a little bit more simplistic. But what I want to do is, I don't expect everyone, and certainly not myself, to come back and say, be able to recite all the different steps and, talk like a theologian about what all of them means. What I do hope that you get out of this when we're done is at least a fair understanding of where he was coming from, where he's going, where he's trying to take us along, and to see how we can apply this in our lives for ourselves. Okay? Because, if we can't apply it in our lives, then it's pretty much useless. So I want to make sure that we can figure out how we can use this in our lives. So as far as introduction goes, let's talk about the text itself. Who was the author? That's a good place to start. I'm going to turn this off because it's driving me nuts. Who was the author of The Ladder of Divine Ascent? Huh? St. John Climacus, yeah, it's right there on the title. It was St. John, yeah. Who got that right?
Everybody.
Okay, good. So that was an easy question. Now here's another question. Who was the intended audience? Monastics, all right. So St. John, very good. So St. John Climacus was a monk, and he was writing this to
Novices.
okay, novices, other monks, other people that were studying to be monks. What time frame are we talking here? What was the time frame?
It says in the introduction it was that he got to St. Catherine's Monastery sometime between AD 381 and 384.
Okay, 381, 384. Okay, what time frame though did he
And
write?
that was when he was 16, so this
Right.
was later.
Right, that was
Yeah.
later. So what time frame are we looking at?
5th century?
What's that?
5th century?
Okay, yeah, let's say probably around the 5th century is the time frame that he was working. Now, when we think about monasticism at that time in the Christian world, what was the world like at that time that St. John was writing? What was the world like? Very important aspect of this whole thing.
Probably pretty hard.
Pretty harsh, but as far as being Christian,
Roman persecution.
time of Roman
A
persecution.
lot of political strife.
Okay. Think
there
about the
was-
time.
Yeah, I think it was, what was the Edict of Milan? I
Edict
think
of
it was-
Milan, what year was that?
Christianity is
311,
legal,
so-
but it's still a very pagan world.
Right, yes.
I just wanted to clarify. It says this is probably written in the latter half of the
6th century. Yep.
Oh, 6th century.
6th century. Yep.
So much later.
300 thing is, it says.
Well, that's just the earliest monastic life in Sinai. So we're looking at the 6th century. So, but that still gets back to the question that we had. So what is going on in the world at that time?
Rome is fallen.
Okay, Rome is fallen.
The West is dark.
What about from the monastic? What about from the Christian religion standpoint? You hit on it before. The Edict of Milan.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Well,
311,
it's-
313. What was the
that whole
significance of
area,
that?
The whole Mediterranean basin was largely Christian at that time.
Okay,
But-
that's the thing I'm getting
But
at. So.
by that time, you've got Islam.
Okay, we have Islam rising up too. But as far as the Christians go, what is happening now in the world? We see that the
Pretty
Christians,
strong in their faith at that point.
they were strong in their faith, but also the whole empire now was, we could say, nominally Christian, right? Because of Constantine and Helen. Constantinople, the movement of the Roman Empire from the west over to the east. When did that happen? Right around, before 325, right? 325-ish. Okay, so now we're looking into the 6th century. So we're jumping from the 4th century to the 6th century. 200 years. What has the Christian faith at this point lacked that it had in the first 3 centuries? Persecution. That is something very, very important that we need to remember here. So when we first looked at the early church in the first 3 centuries, 2.5 to 3 centuries, persecution, right? That was kind of how you earned your crown, was through martyrdom, right? Even a lot of the church fathers, if you read like St. Anthony, we'll get to him a little bit. I mean, that was one thing that he was actually seeking. But by the time he came along, a lot of that, the big persecutions were over, all right? So they didn't see that as an opportunity, if you will, in order to show their love of Christ, their love for Christ, in order to be able to die to the world. So how else did they do that?
By becoming a monastic.
By becoming a monastic, by going out to the desert. So now they're dying to the world. They're able to remove themselves from the world and go out into the desert. So that's what we're seeing. So yeah, you're right. In the first part here, when we're talking about the 381, 384, that's when they said that monasticism was first appearing in the Sinai desert. And again, the reason for that is that by this time we have Christianity's legal religion. We have we'll say a Christian emperor, right? We have all these other things that are going on in the empire where Christianity is not being persecuted. So people are looking at that and they're going, wow, the whole history of our Christian church up to that time was based on persecution, right? Starting with Christ. St. Stephen, right through the New Testament, and then as we go on into the early parts of the church. So now, we're looking at a time frame in that area where the church is established, and maybe some people would say a little bit too established. It's a state religion, if you will. It's accepted. You're right, there is the rise of Islam, but we haven't got quite to that point yet. I mean, you want to say 630s, maybe a little bit before the middle of the 7th century, right, the rise of Islam. But that's not what drove people into the desert. What drove them into the desert was to be able to die to themselves.
Do we see some of that in our own culture, right? I mean, because I've read about, I can't remember who it was specifically, but recently about a politician who looked for a church. He wasn't a Christian necessarily, just because it would advance his station in life.
Sure.
So you've got a church that is part of the empire, and so it pays to be a Christian. And now, maybe for the first time in our lifetimes, we're feeling a little bit of the reverse, where maybe you got to pay a little bit of a price,
right?
And so you've got to be pretty serious about it.
It's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what happens if you look at it? If we say, that's a good point. If we say that the United States is a Christian nation, all right? Let's just make that blanket statement. It's a Christian nation.
Really?
Maybe
Well,
up until hold on.
Yeah.
As opposed to a Muslim nation, all right? Let's just say that it's a
Okay.
Christian nation. Think about our nation. Maybe certainly since the rise of communism, atheist communism, and if we look at that from the standpoint of our political views, our political lives, all right, one of the things that certainly delineated us against them, right? The good guys, bad guys. I mean, anybody who's, most of us have lived through the Cold War, right, since post-World War II, was the fact that they were atheists. But we weren't. In God we trust, right? Pledge of Allegiance. All that stuff came post-World War II-ish, or certainly with the rise of communism, as a way of distinguishing us as being people of God. Now, which God? Well, of course, the Judeo-Christian God.
It's a pretty
and a
low
lot
bar,
of...
isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a pretty low bar, atheism.
I know. But I mean, that's the distinguishing factor. So as you're saying, it's the same thing with the empire as well. So think about this. If you were running for... Well, let's think about John F. Kennedy. So we're talking about politics here. What made him so unelectable? Catholic, right. That's Christian, ain't it? I don't know. To some people it wasn't Christian enough because they saw this as being a Christian Protestant nation because of, I guess, more of the background, and most of our presidents were Protestants. Okay, so to your point, that's exactly true. So people could see, maybe, if not believing, certainly attending, church services of the Church of the Empire. And I mean, you'll find that anywhere, whatever the Church of the Empire is, even if it's communism, right? I mean, if that's your church, if that's your faith, if that's your religion, if you want to advance in your career, if you want to advance in your life, your schooling, anything else, you're going to have to belong to the party. Now, it's optional,
Of course.
but...
Yeah, of course it's optional.
Well, it's optional, yeah, but I mean, still, if you want to advance, likewise with the Christian faith in the empire. So a lot of the people saw this as saying, hey, this Christianity is not the Christianity I had read about. It's not the Christianity I'd heard about. Not the Christianity that people talk about when they talk about a faith of the martyrs, a heavy-duty faith that is going to take your life. You are making a commitment. You're standing up for something you believe in that could potentially get you killed. So, out to the desert we go. Now, what do we know? I mean, just basically, I know it doesn't talk about a lot in the introduction, but what do we know about the life that they lived out in the desert as compared to living in the world? Hey, guys.
Very isolated.
Okay, isolated?
Nobody around, no food, no water, no comforts.
Okay, so comforts were very little, and in the was it in this introduction? The other introduction was talking about the different types of monasticism. Here, I've got a Kindle, so it's not down on the first page, but they're talking about 3 forms of monasticism were practiced on Sinai at that time, and we're talking about the end of the 4th century, the 381-384 time frame. The communal or cenobitic form, a brotherhood living together in a life of common prayer and worship, and shared resources under the guidance of an abbot. All right, that sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? The solitary or eremitic form of hermits or anchorites living alone in the surrounding desert. And then we have the semi-eremitic form of small monastic communities or skeets consisting of spiritual fathers and one or more other monks living together near the monastery grounds. So a lot of this involves that separation from the world, that asceticism that they're practicing so they can go ahead and live a life of prayer, live a life of worship of God. And also, we see that there is also this form, for the most part, of community, too. That's a very important aspect. A lot of times, if you read about the Desert Fathers, in the early days, people would just kind of pack up and go out in the desert. They go, okay, I'm a desert monk, and I'm going to hang out in the desert. Well, as the established church saw this, they said, well, there's some problems here. Because these people are relying on their own beliefs, their own understandings of God, their own understanding of Christ, outside of that Christian community. So then they said, well, let's go ahead. We're going to require even the monks, even like they're talking about the hermits, they're going to have to still belong to part of a community. They're going to have to be under the obedience of a bishop, as it were. And also, most of the time, the requirements are that they will have to come down certain feast days, Sundays for the Eucharist, in order for them to be fed spiritually, but also to be taught and to be guided themselves. So when you go out to the desert, it's not just... This gets back to the whole discussion about me and Jesus, right? So me and Jesus were going out to the desert, and we're gonna learn about each other. That was never really the concept. In the beginning, maybe that's what people thought they were going to do, but the church saw that. They saw the possibilities of issues with that. And so they said, no, we need to bring you back together. You need to have a community to rely on, and certainly a bishop or some sort of hierarch, an abbot or somebody that you're responsible to. Okay, does that make sense? So that's the background that we're looking at here. So the reason I wanted to spend the time I did on this is because it's very important as we read and study the ladder of divine ascent. My concern is always that sometimes people will read this and they'll say, "Oh, this is what I have to do. This is how I have to live." And sometimes if you read some of these different things, it's like, boy, that's pretty depressing. It's not building me up; it's tearing me down, because there's no way I can live as St. John Climacus instructed the monks to live back in the 7th century. But I want to make sure that everyone understands that that's not the point here. So as we go through this study, what I'd like us to do as part of the discussion, so I don't run out of spit, is to be able to talk about these different things, look at them in the standing that they're in, okay? Put it in the time, place, and audience, just as we always should anytime we're reading the Bible or the Church Fathers. Time, place, and audience, right? And then say, okay, now, how does this apply to me today? Understanding that we're not living out in the Sinai desert, and it's not the 7th century and all those other situations. So I want to make sure that that's understood. On the last page here of the introduction, one final word of warning: very few people indeed will ever climb all 30 steps of the ladder of divine ascent. If you think you have, you probably need to go back to the beginning. Well, geez. So back to one of my original questions: why even study this then? We're never going to climb the ladder. What's the use?
It's a goal. You're always working towards it. You're working towards some betterment.
Okay, it's a goal.
Funny you say that, because when we did this study, Beth and I went to the Dormition, and Father John did it with us.
Uh-huh.
He told us that he had started at the back of this book and read it backwards to the front.
Oh, okay.
And so it was another way of going through this.
And that's a good point. So you go from all the way to the top, back down to the
Yeah.
bottom. Sure. And I mean, again,
Which was interesting.
Yeah, it's a different approach to it too.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and we'll climb each rung of the ladder and see how long it takes to get there.
Stay on it.
And hopefully we stay on it. So, did we have? Oh yeah, here we have a couple of. Are these the extras here? And I can print up some more. Oh, there's a whole bunch of extras. So, you're welcome. If it gets too cold, I'll kick on the heater. I don't want to freeze anybody out. It's just that it's really hard to talk over that. So, let's go ahead and we'll start out with the first step. Now, with this, as I was explaining, this little outline here comes from the Father John Mack text. Very simplistic. If you want another outline, you can go ahead and go to the index of your text, and that also, the table of contents rather, that also does a very good breakdown of how this whole ladder breaks down. So, we're going to start out with part 1. Now, as we're reading this, what I wanted to do was to kind of help us focus, because it's easy to kind of get a little lost in the words. There's a lot of words here, and there's a lot of kind of heavy stuff. So what I did was I set this up here, and I made 2 columns, first off, on each one of the steps. And what I was trying to express here, in my own imperfect way, is the passion and the dispassion that St. John is talking about. Now, what do I mean by that? What are we talking about? We're talking about passion and dispassion. Think about that.
Opposite.
Okay, an opposite, right. So, what's a passion? Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, exactly. So we have these passions that we are instructed, more or less, to fight against. Isn't that really what he's trying to do? He's trying to help these monks, when it was originally written, to climb this ladder, to put aside all these different passions, to become dispassionate in their life. Now, each one of the rungs on the ladder really is talking about a particular passion that he is trying to address in this particular rung of the ladder. So he's saying that if you start down here and take this one step, now you're on rung 1, and that's exactly, if you read it, that's exactly how he presents it. Now here's the next step. All right, now you're on rung 2. Now you're a little bit closer. And so each time, as you build up, I guess, your spiritual muscle, you start out down at the bottom of this ladder looking way up, or standing up there looking way down, but you're standing down at the bottom looking way up to heaven, and you're trying to think, so what do I have to do? And this is cumulative, all right? It's not a matter of, if you're up there on step 3, forget about everything on steps 1 and 2, right? It's cumulative. So the idea is that as you're building up these spiritual muscles, all right, as you're building these spiritual muscles, climbing the stairs, hopefully you're building up yourself, and you're coming closer to the 30th step. All right? But what I did was I put 2 columns on the side here. What I'd like you to do is, as you go through this, I mean, I'm not coming up with any kind of formula, but I would like you to read it and come up with your own ideas of the passions and the dispassions of each one of the steps. All right? There is no right answer. All right? This is just something I was kind of thinking about, and I was trying to think of some way to help it make sense to me, and hopefully to you as well. And I just put in there a passion, dispassion, and that's kind of the focus I want to have. So as we talk about the different rungs of the ladder, as we close up, I'm going to say, okay, what do we think the passion is that St. John is trying to address here? And most of the time, in there, little hint, he comes right out and says, this is the passion that we're working on. This is the passion that we're trying to overcome. But he doesn't say necessarily, this is the dispassion. All right? Does that make sense? So what I want you to do is kind of think about it and see, because this is going to help you apply it to your own life. Does that make sense? And again, I'm not going to turn around at the end and say, okay, you tell me. We're not going to do a round robin. We have too many people, and it just scares me anyway. So I'm not going to do that. But what I would like you to do is, as you go through this and you come up with what you think the passions and dispassions are, if you have questions, bring them up. We can either do the email chain, or I prefer, bring them over here next week. But if it's something that you really, really need to talk about, we'll go ahead and do that through the email, or give me a call. But again, I'm no expert on this. I mean, I just read it probably fewer times than most of you have. I'm just hoping that I can facilitate this, and we can get something interesting out of it. All right? Mm-hmm. So let's move on. The first rung of the ladder. What did we say that was? Renunciation. Okay. So in terms of renunciation, or really in terms of everything that he talks about here, what is it that we're expected to renunciate? How about if somebody just reads that first paragraph here? This is directly from the ladder. Can someone
read it? Okay.
Thank you.
A friend of God is the one who lives in communion with all that is natural and free from sin, and who does not neglect to do what good he can. The self-controlled man strives with all his might amidst the trials, the snares, and the noise of the world, to be like someone who rises above them.
Okay. So I think that's pretty succinct. So what is it here that he's talking about that we need to renunciate? Don't just say the world. I mean, okay, yeah, we got to renunciate the world. But what exactly is he talking about? And this is the first step, too. What are some of the things he's talking about? Well, first of all, I see he's talking about a self-controlled man, person, whatever you want to say, but someone who possesses self-control strives with all his might amidst the trials and snares and noise of the world to be like someone who rises above them.
Not joining in with everybody, the mainstream being.
There you go. Right. So when you renunciate, well, let's work on the definition. What does it mean to renunciate? Maybe that's just a funny word for saying.
Reject.
What's that?
Reject.
Okay, reject. Good. So we want to reject the world. We want to be able to look around what's going on and reject those things that we know are wrong, right? Now, sometimes
at the same time, we still, as we're rejecting those things and those ideas and objects that others bring to us. We don't want to object to people because we need to have love for those people
Oh, absolutely.
at the same time.
Absolutely. So what are we looking at? We're looking at
We're
love the
looking
sinner but hate the sin,
sin.
right? Not the opposite way around, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we look at that, when we make this discussion, people will say, well, I renunciate the world, so therefore I hate him, and him, right? Because I renunciate the world.
People do that all the time.
Yeah, they do it all the time in one fashion or another. And again, we need to be very careful. That's a very, very important aspect, certainly of Christianity, but also of renunciation. Who here, I don't know, certainly not me, wants to be defined by their sins? No. All right? Maybe you murder somebody. Do you want to be called a murderer for the rest of your life? Do you want to be called an adulterer? You want to be called a thief? You want to be called a blasphemer? It's like, oh yeah, there's so-and-so, he's a blasphemer. I mean, no. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but really that's kind of how we sometimes think about that. We define people by their sins, or what we perceive to be their sins, and we then what? Become judge, jury, executioner, right?
Right, and in that case, I mean, we're really not renouncing those things because we're holding on to them because we're doing that.
Right, and so we're just as guilty, right? I mean, of course, our sins aren't as bad as theirs, but I mean, the point is that, we are guilty of those kind of sins, and that's the kind of stuff. So, and that's a very good point. So as we look at this renunciation, yes, we need to be discerning, right? We need to look at that, and we need to say, that is wrong, or what that person is doing is wrong, right? But certainly, we don't want to define that person by that sin that they're caught up in, because we don't even know. We don't know what a lot of people are going through. That gets back to Jesus talking about the cinder in the log in your eye. How can you see the cinder in your brother's eye or neighbor's eye when you have such a log?
Out first.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing. Now, on the other hand, I like the way people like to throw around, well, judge not, lest ye be judged, and all this other stuff, right? When you turn around and you look at something and you say, that is morally wrong. Whatever it is, that's morally wrong. And people will oh, judge not, you're supposed to be a Christian, you can't judge. Well, no. You are supposed to discern. God will judge. But you're discerning what that person is doing. It's separating the sin from the sinner. Because that person still has that image and likeness of God. No matter how tarnished it is, no matter whether we agree with it or not, they still have that. Just like we do. And every time we sin, we're tarnishing it over a little bit more, put a little bit more mud or whatever on that likeness of God that's in us. But still, it doesn't change us from being a creature, a creation of God. We still are. We still are. And that's the same thing with that person too. So the renunciation is being able to look at what's going on. They talk about the self-control and strive with all your might against the trials and snares and noise of the world. Now, noise of the world, this is interesting. I like that study for our CIA meeting. Remember, we talked about silence. We talked about silence.
Yes.
And how does that apply here? The noise of the world. I know most people, but I know the people that were in our CIA meeting when we talked about that.
You hear God in the silence.
We hear God in the silence.
And and there's so much noise in the world everywhere you go. You have to set it. You have to find a way to set it aside. And listen.
Because we get so busy and caught up in everything that, we don't take that time out to listen.
Sure.
Just sit back
And so, the author of the book, his name slips me now, Newen, he made a pretty interesting point. Now, he's a Roman Catholic priest, but he makes a pretty good point just the same. He says that when we pray, what should we be doing when we pray? What do we think of when we pray? What are we going to do when we pray? We're going to talk to God, right? And God is going to lean over and he's going to listen. We're going to tell him, God, this is all the things that are going wrong. This is all the things that you're going to fix for me. This is why I'm so good. But what did he say? He said, think about prayer in a different way. How does he... And I thought that was pretty profound.
Listen. You have to listen.
Listen. Prayer is listening, right? And as we look at this first step here, when we talk about all that noise in the world, right? It makes it kind of hard to listen to God, listen to anything, when there's a lot of noise. Right? So, how do we get away from that noise? What do we do about that?
We go into our own room, or you go within your own self so that you can close off the noise and the distractions and
Okay.
everything else around you, so that you can just have that quiet time alone and just stand there in silence, with God, and it comes.
Mm-hmm. Now, how easy is that?
Very difficult.
Think about your day, and I'm not going to ask for any any confessions. Think about your day. How much time do you really have to be able to spend, let's say 10, 15
Not
minutes?
enough.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah.
I just yesterday, I heard a priest share with the congregation that he says his prayers laying down, because as soon as his feet hit the ground, he's got to go. Wow.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's parishioners, people demanding of his time and everything.
Right, right.
And as long as he's like this, he doesn't have to answer to anybody but God.
Well, yeah, and, I mean, whatever works, I don't know, I
If
mean,
he's like this, and he has to get like this, then he's on his cross.
but the whole point is that it's really hard in our life. You think about that. You get up in the morning, and maybe some people, you're running all the time, right?
The second that you
The
wake up.
second you hit the floor.
Yep.
Maybe some people like to always have noise around anyways, right? I know a lot of times I call people, or people call me, and I'm like, can you turn the TV down? Because I can't hear anything you're saying. And the TV's cranked up, or the radio, or something, I don't know, whatever noise is always noise. And I ride in a van pool, and for me, most of the time when I ride, I don't have any noise on. Sometimes I'll listen to talk radio, but most of the time I don't have any noise on. And there's people in the van pool, so whoever drives gets to choose what radio station. So you get to hear all the oldies, you get to hear all the modern country and all this other stuff. And to me, it just drives me up the wall, because I like to have that time, that hour of riding from Brighton over to Detroit and then back every morning is a time to be quiet. Now, I have my prayer rope, I take my little prayer rope, and I try to do my prayers until I fall asleep or something like that. But I try. But that is some quiet time that's set aside. That's forced quiet time, and unfortunately, sometimes that's ruined by other people. But the whole point is
That's
so
called
quiet.
commuting. If you want that quiet time,
Mm-hmm.
then you can't commute.
But I like that too, like when I'm driving to work, that 5 minutes I have going to work or coming home from work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I work
Sure.
close. But still, you have that time alone. There's nobody else. with
Right,
you. It's quiet.
right,
You have
absolutely.
it
Yeah, maybe I need to clarify. On the van pool, we just drive one day a week, so one day I drive, but 4 days I get to sit quietly. So yeah, you're commuting. I mean, it would be nice to be able to come into church and light some candles, and really get into it. But unfortunately, we take it where we can. But that noise is everywhere, and it's really hard to shut that down. But as St. John points out here with the renunciation, being able to shut that off is important. Now, why is that important from the standpoint of renunciation? Why do you think that's important? Why would he even mention that?
One thing that I've thought of as we've gone into Lent is I've tried to stay off of Facebook more, because it just gets you thinking about things that aren't necessarily the things that are good to be thinking about. Not everything on there is bad, but it can, especially if it's maybe political things or, people who are having an argument about something. It's just, it takes you out of that place of stillness within.
Right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what that does, it kind of breaks that stillness, that I guess the good thoughts that maybe you've acquired gradually, either through silence at home or at church, through the different services. And as soon as you get into the car and you poke that button, and next thing you know, there's the people in there arguing and yelling. That's the thing I always think, they yell at each other and stuff. And I think that really, what's that?
That eats up all your time.
But
I remember I tried Facebook. I don't know, what was it, like 8 years or so ago. Went on it for a couple months and just went off. I'm like, all the time
well, it's a good tool, but again, it's like anything else. We got to remember. I'm not saying that TV's bad, that radio's bad, music is bad, but everything needs to be done in moderation. And also, we need to make sure that we're filtering what we're bringing into the house, right? especially with TV, especially or whatever, cable TV, whatever, television, those kind of things, whatever you're bringing into your house, and especially if you have young children, I mean, that's a big thing. Not just for young children, but also for yourself. What are you bringing into your house? What are you seeing? What kind of trash are you bringing in? I mean, if you had to go out and buy that magazine or something like that, or buy that video, would you go out and buy it and bring it in and put it in? I said, no, but since it's showing up on my screen for free, I think I'll just go ahead and. But see, that's the thing. It's still just as bad. Now, it also talks about the self-controlled man strives with all his might amidst the trials and snares and noise of the world to be like someone who rises above them. Now, what does he mean by rising above them? As we're talking about here specifically.
Well, I think part of rising above something like that is being really, truly able to just ignore it and realize how unimportant that is.
There you go. That's probably one way of rising above it. You can shut it off, shut it completely off.
Like, right. I mean, like you said, you're riding to work and you're kind of almost forced to hear, you try to black it out, I think we all have that in the workplace to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to, for me, I just allow myself, I'm just not going to listen, I'm not going to pay attention, it's not important.
There you go.
And that makes it easier for me to go back to that quiet place, and
Right.
change.
No, and you bring up a good point when you tell yourself that's not important, right? So how do we establish what's important? As we're talking about here about the renunciation, what we're saying is that we have to give up something. We have to renounce something. How do we determine the value of all those things that are going on in the world, all those things that need to be renunciated, that need to be rejected?
Whether or not they're Christ-centered.
Okay, that's a good way. Christ-centered. Okay, if they're Christ-centered. What else? How else can we determine? I mean, I'm just kind of trying to get some ideas here.
They help us with them.
Okay. Okay, positive, negative. Okay. Are they helpful or are they hurtful? I mean, I could say, well, how do you feel after you hear it? But I mean, if you're listening to some kind of political exchange and laughing or something like that, or it entertains me, right? That's what it is. It's entertainment. It makes me laugh. But really, is there any real value in it? Is it positive? Is what you're putting in? Think about this. If you lived on a diet of nothing but junk food all the time, how healthy would your body be? I'm talking to kids here, but I mean, they're laughing. They're going, oh, yeah, look at me. Yeah. It'll catch up with you. It'll catch up with you. Look at me. No, but I mean, if you constantly, what's that?
It's where you put the value. It's where you put the value in those things.
Exactly. But if you're constantly fed on junk, that's how your body's going to look. If your mind is constantly fed on junk, if you can't reject that and push that away, then, and even as he says, it's a matter of rising above the snares, the trials and snares. What are some of the snares that he might be talking about here? I mean, I know he's, back in the 7th century, but today, what are some of the snares?
Drinking, adultery, blasphemy.
Okay. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Hey, I have a question though.
Yeah.
Please.
Sure.
We're talking about how do we rise above some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see if it's political, Donald Trump, I can see if it's desperate housewife or scandal, I can see if it's all that. But what about the news? Real, honest-to-God news at 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
You have issues on there that are disgusting, and you have humanitarian issues where you can go and help. So when do you know to turn it on, and when do you know to turn it off?
Okay.
You have to watch the whole thing in order to get to the good stuff.
You won't know until it's too late.
Yeah.
Isn't that
No,
where
no.
that's where discernment comes in, though,
That's
right?
where
So you
discernment
have to
comes in.
decide which of those things is important and which of those things are not, which of those things matter.
Okay, but
and
you
are
have
gonna
to put
help
you'd have to put the program on though to start it, right?
Yeah, but so that's what I'm saying. So if there's stuff might be important in the news, humanitarian things that are happening in the world that you want to know about, that because there are ways that you can help, and you don't know until you hear it. But that's where discernment comes in. That's where prayerfulness comes in.
And the mute button.
And the mute button.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can mute it.
I think that with the news, it's 24/7. So if you turn your TV on at 5 o'clock and you don't turn it on until 9 o'clock or whatever, and all you have is news, you've heard that news 3, 4, 5 times. You've heard the same thing over and over. Watch it once and turn it off. That's
Could I
what,
use you as
that's
an
just kind
example?
of,
Could I use your permission?
yeah.
5:30 in the morning, I'm listening to WXYZ News. I couldn't wait to call you because you knew what I heard.
Yeah.
It was about her grandbaby.
Oh, yeah,
I called
yeah.
Susan to get the phone number. I was so excited. I heard nothing else on the news other than our Lila. Okay?
But see again, it's a matter of, the way I see it is that it's a lot of data, all right? A lot of data, just stuff. We need to connect the dots of all this stuff that we hear.
But
right?
we're inundated all day long anyway, whether
Sure.
it's on TV or, you just got done saying that, it doesn't matter if it's TV, we're with our coworkers, with our,
Right.
Exactly.
When it gets to be that little,
Everybody.
I agree.
Exactly.
it's just we have to.
So what do? You go to the desert of Sinai and you don't have to listen to it. Problem solved, right? No?
No, but there's times you turn it off, you shut it off,
Sure.
and you make that time. If you have to decide what's important to you and make the decision, and you say, okay, I'm going to make this time my quiet time, and
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. That's the point I'm trying to make. We are inundated with noise. We're inundated with data. You can take a look at any piece of information. I don't care what it is. You could say that's pornography. But no, just take a look at the information that's in there. And you can say, oh, that's good. There's some value in that. Now, how is it being applied? How is it manipulated? How is it turned from raw data into information and being presented to us to use? That is where the problems come in. And that's where the discernment has to come in. Where you have to say at this point, this is no longer interesting, this is no longer beneficial, this is no longer positive, this is no longer useful, this is no longer worthwhile, this is no longer Christ-centric, and turn it off. That's the discernment. That's how we're going to be able to rise above. Here, and again, I can't give the page number, but he's quoting again. Innocence, abstinence, temperance. These make a fine, thrice firm foundation. Let all infants in Christ begin with these, taking real infants as their example. For among children no evil is found, nothing deceitful, no insatiable greed or gluttony, no flaming lust. And Father talked about that when we were yesterday in his sermon last Sunday. In his sermon, right, when he talks about coming as little children. And I think as you read this and study this a little bit more, originally when you think about it, you think that's kind of goofy being a little kid and stuff like that. But that is the sort of innocence, that is the sort of desire to please God that we need to have. So if we look at this and we talk about how do you discern? Well, innocence, abstinence, and temperance. We could even use those three, he calls them the foundation. We can use all those three as, I guess, as a tape measure, as a measuring stick to say, is this worthwhile? Does it express this? Okay? I mean, there is no pat answer to this. You need to find that for yourself. But the idea is to be able to apply that discernment and see what is Christ-like and what is real, what is of real value, as opposed to what is just noise. What needs to be rejected?
When the loop starts, I agree with the ladies here, when the loop starts and it's all the same stuff over. So at that point I make the decision, okay, I don't need to listen to it. But in there it's mixed good with...
Sure, there always is. There always is.
It's with everything. There's always going to be the good mixed in with a lot of the bad. We find that in a lot of situations.
Here's something else. Christians renounce the world by living for something other than the world. Now, how does that get into renunciation? Exactly as we're talking about right here. We have to be in the world. We don't have a choice. This is like the only game in town, right? The world. Now, you can go to another country. It's going to be better. It's going to be worse. Right? You can go to another city. Might be better. Might be worse. But the point is, you're still in the same world. You're still suffering from the same temptations. Mm-hmm. And we have to be able to rise above that. Do whatever good you may. Speak no evil of no one. Rob no one. Tell no lie. Despise no one. And carry no hate. Do not separate yourself from the church assemblies. Very important. We talked about that as the deserts, with the desert fathers. Show compassion to the needy. Do not be a cause of scandal to anyone. Stay away from the bed of another and be satisfied with whatever your own wife can provide you. If you do all of this, you will not be far from the kingdom of heaven. All right? So what they're talking about is renouncing those things which are not good, which are not positive, and being able to develop that life within Christ. So, any questions on that first one? Renunciation, did we hit that hard enough?
Did you say do what your wife tells you?
Let me reread that.
That will bring you closer to God. That's what he said.
It says, stay away from the bed of another and be satisfied with what your own wife can provide you.
And that's really good advice.
So, I don't see where it says do what she tells you. It says if you do all this.
Hey, Bruce.
St. Bruce, all right. That's right. We need some icons here.
Bruce, if you don't do what your wife tells you, you can become very close to God very quickly.
What if you'd like to be happy?
That's right. Okay, well, let's go ahead. We'll talk about step 2, detachment. All right. I want to see if we can go ahead. We'll go for another. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, please. For about another 15-ish minutes, and we'll close it up. Let's talk about detachment. Who can read that first paragraph there under detachment, step 2? Someone save me some.
I will.
Thank you.
Derided, mocked, jeered, you must accept the denial of your will. You must patiently endure opposition, suffer neglect without complaint, put up with violent arrogance. You must be ready for injustice and not grieve when you are slandered. You must not be angered by contempt, and you must show humility when you have been condemned. Happy are those who follow this road and avoid other highways. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
This would be a tough one.
I just
Yeah. I was going to say, when I read this, same thing.
We're going to be on this step for a
We're
while.
going to be on this step for a long while.
Did you just fall off too? I did. I just fell off.
Is that just
was I on?
lay down like a doormat?
So okay, no, but there's a good question. So let's take a look at this. Who said that about the doormat?
I said, is that paraphrase lay down like a doormat?
Yeah, take it. You're supposed to stand there and
Just take it, right? Take
Stand
all
up
the
for your
abuse.
rights.
Stand up for your rights. It's your right, isn't it? As a human being, we shouldn't be derided, mocked, jeered, right?
Like Christ was.
Aha.
No fair.
She read another book.
If you think about our country where we live, specifically American individualism, right? It's anathema to everything that we're taught about as Americans, right?
Absolutely.
Even contempt for the government and
That's right.
Sure.
Stand
Absolutely.
up for yourself.
We're taught that.
Yeah.
Oh, small
You're
child
absolutely right.
here. So, it becomes a really hard thing for us to
Unlearn.
those things that we've been taught for
Right.
our whole life. And to
But so here's the question. Does he say, when he's talking about this, does he say you have to like it?
no.
No. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd say that's step 30.
But you should learn to like it. You should learn to like it, because the thing is, if we want to learn to be Christ-like,
We've got to learn to like Christ, not to like... Let me ask you this. Do you think Christ liked?
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think.
what did he say in the Garden of Gethsemane?
no, I don't think.
When tears came from his eyes like what? What did he say? Give me a little more? No.
No, of course he didn't like it.
So,
But part of what we don't like about it is we take it, this is going to sound weird, but we take it personally, right?
okay.
Christ did not take it personally. He knew they were wrong.
Right.
He allowed it to happen.
And there was something else too. What happened when he got the jeering? We know he didn't like it. He couldn't have liked it. We don't like it. But what was he able to control? Was he able to control the jeering?
No.
He's able to control himself.
Well, he was perfectly humble too, and we're filled with pride.
Sure.
That's a big difference.
Sure, it's a big difference too. But he did have that humanity too. So does that mean there's no way that we can reach that level of humility because we're not God men? Is that why?
No.
Was he hungry?
Yes.
Did he hurt?
Yes.
Did he cry? Did he?
Yes.
Did he? I mean, like I was saying in the Garden of Gethsemane, take this cup from me.
Verse in the Bible. He
Yeah,
wept.
he wept.
Sorry, Deacon. We were distracted.
All right, that's all I have.
There was a noise.
All right. All right.
This is like that school when it snowed.
Where were we? All right.
Okay.
Let's detach ourselves from the deer herd. That's true. That was meat on a hook, right? That was fast food.
And they're still out there.
Oh, they're looking at it.
All right.
They're watching us splash up.
All right, open the door, bring him in, then the turkey will come in here. Then you'll be
We don't
sorry.
want him in here.
But yeah, so that's the whole thing. He's not saying that you got to learn to like it. No. In fact, we should dislike it. We should hate that. We should not. The thing is, when we're talking about martyrdom, and this is something as you're studying the church fathers, you found that there were certain people who said, "I am going to go out and I'm going to seek martyrdom." All right, because that's the way I have to earn my crown. I have to earn my way into heaven is by seeking martyrdom. So I will go out and I will intentionally do things to upset the government, right? Instead of letting them come to me when I have that opportunity to witness, I'm going to go marching out there and I'm going to shout from the roofs, "Hey, I'm a Christian," and all this other stuff, and mock you and all this other stuff to try to get myself killed, and then I can say, "Look, I'm a martyr because I died for Christ, because I was a Christian. They killed me because I was a Christian." But the church fathers would turn around and say, "No, that doesn't qualify. That doesn't make it. All you are is just a good person."
That's almost going out asking to be like almost committing suicide.
That's exactly how they saw it.
By doing something like that.
Right,
That's
and
harming
likewise with
yourself.
this here too. When in a class I'm taking on patristics, the professor was talking about how people would say. He said, he was talking to some people. They said, "Well, I went over to a gay marriage rally or something like that, and I said, I'm a Christian and you guys are wrong and all this other stuff, and they turned around and jeered me and threw things at me and stuff like that. So therefore, I was persecuted for Christ."
No. He went there so that could happen to him.
He went there for that same purpose. Now,
It's not.
yeah. So and it's the same thing here as we talked about being derided, mocked, and jeered. It's not a matter of seeking that. It's not a matter of liking it. We should dislike it. We shouldn't go out there and intentionally look for those opportunities to be mocked and jeered. But the question is, what do you do when it does happen? You rise above it. That's the detachment. Now, when he's talking about that in relationship to detachment, what are we detaching from?
From our pride.
Pride? Anger?
What the world thinks is
The world?
our ego.
The world's opinion, right? We just talked about that. Someone comes by and they make fun of you or they say something to you or something like that you don't like. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, people pull guns and get shot for something like that. Totally ridiculous. That should never happen. But it does. Because we have our pride. We see that in varying degrees, different places that you go. And people will say, well, no, I have that right because I have my pride. My pride was hurt.
You dissed me.
Yeah, you dissed me. Yeah. And so what would the rest of the people think of me if I let that disrespect, if I let that insult go unchallenged or certainly, unaddressed, lack of a better word, right? So that's the kind of stuff when we talk about detachment. That is the detachment that he's talking about here in order to get up on that second ladder. And I think it's interesting because he puts this, and this is a very short chapter too if you take a look at it. And he puts it down there on the second rung. And as I was reading that, I'm thinking, man, I'm having a hard time getting past. I'm glad this isn't like a ladder to my roof and I got to clean out the gutters because I'm going to be down here for a long time. But the whole idea is he's taken some of the hard things, the renunciation, detachment. He's taking some of those pretty hard things. He's putting them down at the bottom. Why do you think he's doing that? Foundation, exactly. And as we discussed, you don't turn around and say, okay, got that, check, step 2, okay, got that, forget about all that stuff. It's not like cramming for a test, right? You cram, you take the test, it's done, thank gosh, and move on to the next topic. No, this is something that we need to learn, and we need to learn it well enough to be able to carry that. Because really, all of these things that we learn down here at the base, at the foundation, at the bottom of that ladder, we are going to have to use as we're climbing further up. Happy are those who follow this road and avoid other highways. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven, he says. Now, as we look at this from the standpoint of just monastics, because again, this was written towards monastics, do you think monastics maybe suffered the same things that we do as far as the issue of detachment, the issue of being able to put aside their pride? But I mean, they're monks, they're nuns, they're perfect, they're in a perfect environment, they're praying to God.
They're still human.
Absolutely.
They were man first.
They're still human, and it's not only when they detach from the world, they also have that detachment where they leave and they go into the monastery or even the desert. They left even their whole families and everything behind.
Sure.
I mean, that's a really hard...
Well, let me ask you this. What do you find in a monastery?
A family.
A family, yes, exactly.
Humans.
You find humans. What's that monastery made up of? All these humans.
And they still, on a daily basis, they deal with each other's personalities, different things going on.
Sure.
Pilgrimages that are going on at different monasteries when people, they have to.
And it's tough. It's very tough. So I think too that maybe he brought this up early in his discussion because he probably saw this as an issue that a lot of the monastics had to deal with. And especially if you're in a family like that, that makes it even harder, right? How do you feel if someone who is supposed to love you, all right? Everyone should love you, but who's supposed to love you, but yet they turn around and do something that you feel was wrong, that was mean. Maybe they jeered you, they mocked you, or something like that. How would you feel, as opposed to a complete stranger coming by and whatever, giving you a hard time? How would you feel in that case? Just so.
Can I use you? Susan and I just had a conversation a moment ago when she got done reading this, and I shared with her, I would not find it offensive if she had jeered me, mocked me, and said angry things, because I know in her heart she loves me.
Right.
But a total stranger, I would find it difficult.
Well, that's interesting. So,
Me too. I think for other people would find it the other way. I mean, I wouldn't, if Susan ever did that, which I don't think Susan would ever do that to me, would do it.
She does it to me, though.
I wouldn't feel her easy because
I'll take
I
it.
too would think, knowing Susan, she did, because we know Susan's such a sweet
right. But let me ask you this, but would you expect that?
No, you wouldn't
you wouldn't.
expect it. You wouldn't expect it, and you'd be shocked by it.
You'd be shocked and probably,
hurt.
and you'd hurt.
And you'd be hurt. And I think that's
And you would think maybe you would turn it on yourself and say, what did I do to cause that?
Right.
If a complete stranger comes by, you go, but if it's somebody that you love, somebody that you know, somebody that's out of character, you would say, well, what did I do to deserve that, right?
Yeah, there's times you think that.
Right,
You're like,
right.
why? And it could be nothing that you did at all.
Yeah.
Well, but when a perfect
Susan
stranger does it, you don't
would be
think
saying
much of it.
Susan would be saying it because she meant it out of love. I don't think anybody
But-
saying something here.
Well,
No, I understand, but this was,
You know that's
Yeah,
not
but-
love.
I would know.
yeah, I think, yeah, but hold on, yeah, we're looking at two different things here. We're looking at constructive criticism as opposed to somebody coming by and actually jeering at you.
But I thought you asked,
Yeah.
what if you knew the person? Didn't
Yeah,
you just
yes.
ask that? And that's what I'm saying. If Susan said that about me, or Rebecca said that about me, I'd be
Okay.
okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when you're in a family, okay, a lot of times it's harder to get along with the people in your family because you expect them to love you. I don't know, maybe not. Just my expectations is that if somebody does something to me who totally doesn't know me, all right, nothing personal, it's business. All the things I got to put up with vendors and stuff like that. How could they do that? Well, it's not personal, it's business. But if my own family did that,
It's a betrayal.
But Susan's not my family. She's my church fammy.
Well,
I don't live with her.
okay,
So
so
there is a separation. But I
separation of church and family. No, I understand. No, no, that's fine. No, I understand. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I guess the point that we're trying, that certainly I believe that St. John is trying to make here, is that how do we react when we have those sort of situations? Now, again, each person, there's people who have a higher level of tolerance, higher level of patience. Maybe because it's the person who's doing it. Maybe if it's somebody who looks bigger and meaner than me, if they want to jeer at me, I probably would say, okay. If it was someone smaller, I'd say, hey, what's, you know. I mean, there's all different kinds of situations here. Yeah, with my wife, I go, you know. But I mean, the whole point is that detachment is what our reaction is. And so now, hopefully, all of us aren't jumping up swinging. But what are we thinking in our heart?
What did I do wrong? Why did so-and-so do this?
I think
Or
you'd be
what's-
angry, hurt.
Hurt?
You'd be hurt.
Would your reaction be, not so much what did I do, but how am I going to get back?
No,
Maybe.
my
Maybe.
reaction would be to call the person or go to them and talk to them about it.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's,
You're more firmly on the step than some.
That's,
Yeah.
no,
I
that's what
mean, a lot of
do.
times you
Because
think when
things
someone
happen,
does
I
something
ask.
to you, maybe
I would
if
ask.
it's a friend or something, then I would do that. But if it's someone at work or something, you're thinking, oh, wait a minute now.
Sometimes
You know?
I use detachment as it's almost like a sin because I just shared with Catherine one of my sentiments about when people, disagree with me or whatever. I say, whatever.
Yeah.
And it comes across as arrogance sometimes,
But then
I think that's part of it is maybe it's a lack of understanding or empathy for other people. But you know what I mean? It's like I know.
Yeah, but
there's
see,
certain things that I have strong feelings about.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm being affronted by someone about it, or even disagreement. It's like, whatever. This is what I
but I mean, so now
So I
is
wonder
that?
sometimes if
But
that's
would
not
that
But-
feel differently if someone like your own family, your wife?
That's mostly what I'm talking
That's
All right, so that's enough on detachment. Let's keep this going. Yeah.
You guys have to stay.
My
Back down to the first ladder.
Back down to the previous, never mind the intro.
Those guys have to get some homework.
Yeah, you guys got a little homework to do.
Rebecca and I have a separate class.
No, I think you got to separate ends of the table here.
There should be a couples class.
Yeah. I don't know about that. But yeah, so the idea is that we're looking at here. We're gonna wrap it up here because I'm going over my time. But the idea here is that with this detachment is we need to detach from the importance of it, right? What's in our heart? If we turn around and someone jeers us, is our first reaction to get up and swing? Well, that's one thing. If you say, no, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to be a good Christian, I'm going to hate him in my heart. Okay, is that any better? No, I don't know. You can say at least you're not getting sued, but still, the idea is that detachment. We need to detach from that sort of anger from all the different things that are presented in the world.
So the detachment isn't about not caring about the person. The detachment is about not caring about the actions of that person that are hurtful to us.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's not caring. It's caring about your reaction. It's not a not caring. It's a caring, but your reaction, because that's the only thing you can control. If people are jeering you, if people are giving you a hard time at work, at school, wherever you are, a lot of times you can't do anything about it. I'm going to be their friend. I'm going to do what they want to do. If they're going to jeer you, if they're going to give you a hard time, it's going to happen. But all you can control is your reaction to it. And that's that detachment, to be able to completely detach from those sort of feelings, those sort of, I guess, that kind of attitude, that reaction of revenge, that reaction of having to hate.
Right.
But that's why I said, typically I would just call somebody or go to that person and ask them. If something's bothering you or you think you did something to offend them or they did something to offend you, why not just
Oh, absolutely.
talk to
And
somebody?
that's what we should do. Absolutely.
Isn't it just a matter of, there's this organization called I Am Second, and maybe it's kind of like that. We should be second. Christ should be first. So if we
that's
because I always
interesting
want to look
concept.
at, how is this offending me? What's this going to do to me? What kind of a threat is it to me?
Right.
If I can manage to put him first, me second, that gives you some perspective. It's a little bit.
That's a good way of looking at it. Absolutely.
By the way, Father Deacon, I'm always looking for, when I give my confession, it's hard sometimes.
Right.
So you've given me enough for the next 6 months.
I'm here to help.
Then you just start over.
Yeah, he hasn't heard it. Yeah.
Priest will forget what you said.
When you give your confession once a year, it can become 30 years. So let's, and that brings up a good point. So let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. Step one, this is what I have. passion, love for the world, dispassion, love for heaven. All right, what was step 1? Renunciation, right?
Yes.
So I want you guys to think about that. If you can come up with some better passions, dispassions, please do that. The second one, I have the passion of possession and the dispassion of detachment, which is essentially what he was talking about, detachment. But the passion being possession, right? And that could be of anything. We're talking about our anger, our attitudes, our feelings. You know, when we're mocked or jeered or things like that, being able to let loose of those as our possessions. I don't know. Those are just the couple that I came up with. It'd be interesting if you could, you know, when you sit down. Now that we talked about it, think about that and see what you can come up with, and see if you can come up with some better ideas. Because I'm not saying that this is just things that I made up as I was reading it. And sometimes, if you look at it, and I'm just trying to fit it into a few words here, each one of those steps are very complex, so you can get a lot more out of it. And maybe there's something in there that talks to you a little bit differently than certainly it talked to me. So give it a shot. What I'd like to do is, for next week, why don't we go ahead and we take the next 3, rung steps number 3, 4, and 5. Okay? 3, 4, and 5. And so, what are those? I gotta open my book again here.
Exile, obedience,
Penitence.
Exile, obedience, and
repentance.
repentance. Okay? Exile. So let's go ahead. Exile, that's a short one. And then we start going into the fundamentals of virtue. Obedience. That's a nice long one. Oh my gosh. Oh. Yeah. And then repentance. We'll see if we can cover all 3 of those. And then if you have questions, please bring them to the class. We got here about a half hour early. I turned on the heat. So I'll try to do that again, so we can hopefully get this place warmed up. Maybe by then it'll be summer. So,
Deacon, can
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just say, because
Yes.
I really don't want to leave from detachment
No, sure.
until this one part that really spoke to me,
Sure.
where he says, marriage and monasticism
Yes.
have a good deal in common.
Mm-hmm.
Both are lifelong commitments to something apart from ourselves. Both require the same sacrifice of the will. And I thought about, I know on more than one occasion, Father Paul in his sermons would talk about how in marriage we are to accept the criticism of our spouse, because sometimes they can see things that we can't see. And if we're able, and it's often hard, but if we're able with humility to say, oh yeah, you know,
to reflect
and acknowledge,
sure,
then that is definitely a way to grow too in the virtues.
absolutely. And I agree, because I know he said that a lot of times our spouse, if not, should be our mirror to be able to reflect on what we're doing wrong, and we should be able to take that. And again, certainly you're hoping, as we're talking about family, hopefully they're not doing that to be mean, to get back or anything
Hopefully
like
it's
that.
constructive
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Even when it's not, you know, if by some means
What's-
you're able to.
And again, you're
see-
hoping that the spirit that is given it is one of love and one of trying to help you fix all your mistakes.
Right.
So,
Right.
And when it's not,
And vice versa.
I mean, it's all for you. I mean, I wouldn't tell you this.
And when it's not, you pretend it is.
But thank you. Okay, so next week, next Monday, 6:30. Does that time work for everybody? We'll keep it at 6:30. We'll see how that
Can
works
we
out.
take a vote on 6:30 or 7?
Okay.
How about
Like
6:17?
a raising of hands?
Okay. What? So what?
For people that work, I know it might be hard to get here at 6:30.
6:30 is just cutting it real close for me, but that's fine. I mean, I'm going to go.
Okay.
10 minutes late,
How about 6:45?
Is that better? 6:45.
Yeah.
Split the
7
difference?
o'clock was always worked for these classes, and I know you
Right.
travel so far to get here, so
Right.
I'm fine with 7. Do you want to be out later, or do you want?
That's a good point.
It's up to you.
Split the difference,
Well, why don't we try
6:45.
why don't we try it at 6:30, then if it poses a problem,
Okay.
we can always increase.
Okay.
All right.
I have
That sounds
piano
fine.
at 6:30.
Oh, you do? Is that when it starts, when it gets done?
Yeah, that's when it ends.
No, that's when it ends.
So
Okay.
7 o'clock better.
Oh.
Is 7 o'clock bad for
You're not
everybody?
going to be able to attend these.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is 7 o'clock bad for everybody? I mean, if we stick to what you're trying to do,
Right.
be done by 8 or 8:15.
Is that, yeah, because right now,
That's
I
not that
mean,
late.
you know, we're going a little bit over, but I'm going to try to,
As long as we finish up on time, my daughter gets to bed before 9.
okay.
Okay.
So what do we, so guys,
Hey,
before we leave,
still
please.
have like almost
Let's-
an hour.
Yeah. So what do we want to do next week? 6:30, 7, 6:45?
6:45, let's try that. See how-
6:45.
What time do you get done?
I get done at 6:30.
So would 7 be better for you, Catherine?
7 would be better, but 6:45 is okay.
Let's do 7. Yeah, then she doesn't have to rush.
What happened to vote, right?
Is that,
Then let's vote.
all right. Let's vote. So we have 6:30. All in favor of 6:30? All right. All in favor of 7?
I thought you were gonna do 6:45.
And 6:45.
Oh. All in favor of 6:45?
Okay, who's counting? Are you counting, Kate?
All right.
7 o'clock one?
7 o'clock one. So why
Okay.
don't we go ahead? We'll stick to 7.
I'll be here at 6:30, I'll start without you.
Okay. So 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead. Hopefully, it'll give people time to get home, eat, get on over here, and I'll tell Father Gabriel to let him know that we're adjusting the time based on everyone's requirements. We'll stick with that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. It is truly meet to bless you with that token, that are blessed and most pure in the mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, more glorious beyond compared to the seraphim. Without defilement you gave birth to God the Word, through the tokens to magnify you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, thank you.